He sentenced her to 15 years in prison, watching as she broke down in tears, begging him to think of her 3-year-old daughter. What the courtroom didn't know was that Judge William Harrison had been secretly raising that same child for the past 12 years. And today, the truth was about to come out in the most unexpected way. Judge William Harrison was a man of rigid principles and unwavering dedication to justice. At 58, his silver hair and stern expression commanded respect in every courtroom he presided over. He lived alone in a sprawling Victorian house on Maple Street, his wife having passed away from cancer 10 years earlier, leaving them childless. His colleagues knew him as fair but unforgiving, a man who believed the law was sacred and personal feelings had no place on the bench. Maria Santos was 25 when she stood before Judge Harrison, her hands trembling as she clutched a crumpled tissue. A single mother with caramel skin and tired eyes that had seen too much hardship, she worked 3 jobs to support her daughter Sophia. Desperation had driven her to make one terrible choice. She had stolen prescription medications in a pharmacy where she worked the night shift, hoping to sell them to pay for her daughter's medical treatments. Sophia had been born with a rare heart condition that required expensive surgeries, and Maria's insurance had been denied repeatedly. The day Maria stood before Judge Harrison's bench was a cold Tuesday in November. The courtroom was packed with other cases, lawyers shuffling papers, and the usual chaos of the justice system grinding forward. But when Maria's case was called, something shifted in the atmosphere. As the prosecution outlined her crimes, theft of controlled substances, intent to distribute, Judge Harrison watched this young mother crumble before his eyes. "Your Honor," Maria's public defender had said, his voice barely above a whisper, "my client is a first-time offender. She has a 3-year-old daughter who depends on her entirely. She made this choice out of desperation, not greed." Maria had looked up at Judge Harrison with tears streaming down her face. "Please, Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong, but Sophia needs me. She's just a baby. She has no one else. I'm all she has in this world." The judge's gavel felt heavier than usual in his hand. The law was clear. Theft of controlled substances carried a mandatory minimum sentence. But those eyes, filled with a mother's desperation, would haunt him forever. After sentencing Maria to 15 years in state prison, Judge Harrison couldn't shake the image of her breaking down as the bailiff led her away. That same evening, he found himself driving to the address listed in the case file. He told himself he just wanted to ensure the child was being properly cared for by social services. What he found was a cramped apartment where 3-year-old Sophia sat alone, crying in a crib that was too small for her, while a disinterested babysitter scrolled through her phone. "The state will place her in foster care tomorrow," a social worker explained when Judge Harrison called. "Unfortunately, we're overwhelmed. She'll likely bounce between homes for a while." That night, Judge Harrison made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. Using his connections and influence, he quietly arranged to become Sophia's legal guardian. He told his colleagues he was taking time off to care for a sick relative. He told his neighbors he was fostering a child whose family he'd known for years. Everyone bought the story because Judge Harrison had never been known to lie. For 12 years, Judge Harrison raised Sophia as if she were his own granddaughter. He attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game. The serious, imposing judge transformed into a devoted father figure who braided hair, helped with homework, and tucked Sophia in every night with stories about brave princesses who conquered dragons. Sophia grew into a brilliant, kind-hearted teenager with her mother's warm eyes and her guardian's sense of justice. She excelled in school, volunteered at the local animal shelter, and dreamed of becoming a lawyer like the man she called Grandpa Bill. She knew her mother was in prison, but believed the story Judge Harrison had carefully crafted, that her mother had been his dear friend who asked him to care for Sophia before she went away. The twist came on a rainy Thursday afternoon in April, when 15-year-old Sophia was researching a school project about the criminal justice system. She had decided to write about her beloved grandfather's career as a judge, proud to showcase his dedication to fairness and justice. As she scrolled through online court records, searching for interesting cases he presided over, her world came crashing down. There in black and white was her mother's case, State versus Maria Santos. The date matched everything Sophia knew about her mother's sentencing. And there, signed at the bottom of the judgment, was Judge William Harrison's signature. Sophia sat in stunned silence at the kitchen table when Judge Harrison came home from court that evening. The printed case file lay spread before her mother's mugshot staring back from the page. Her hands shook as she looked up at the man who had been her anchor, her protector, her world. "Is it true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Did you send my mother to prison?" Judge Harrison's briefcase slipped from his fingers, crashing to the floor. In all his careful planning, all his years of maintaining the secret, he had never prepared for this moment. He had hoped to tell her when she was older, when she could understand the complexity of the situation. But the truth had found its way out, as truth always does. "Sophia," he began, his voice cracking with emotion he rarely showed, "I can explain. You sentenced my mother to 15 years. Sophia's voice rose, tears streaming down her face. "You took her away from me, and then you took me in? What kind of twisted game is this?" The judge who had commanded courtrooms for decades found himself speechless before a 15-year-old girl whose heart he had unknowingly broken twice. Once when he sentenced her mother, and again by keeping the truth from her. "I followed the law," he said quietly, sitting down across from her. "But I couldn't live with the consequences. I couldn't let you suffer for your mother's mistakes over my duty to uphold justice." The confrontation lasted hours. Sophia screamed, cried, and demanded to know why he had lied to her all these years. Judge Harrison, for the first time in his career, found himself defending not the law, but love. He told her about the night he found her, alone and scared. He told her about the choice he made to ensure she had a stable home and education, and someone who would love her unconditionally. "I could have sentenced your mother to 25 years, he said, his voice heavy with years of carried guilt. "The prosecution asked for the maximum, but I gave her the minimum because I knew it would destroy a child, to lose her mother completely." 3 months later, something unprecedented happened in Judge Harrison's courtroom. Sophia sat in the front row, wearing her best dress, as her mother, released early for good behavior and time served, stood before the same bench where her life had changed 15 years earlier. Judge Harrison, now retiring after 30 years on the bench, looked at the young woman Maria had become in prison. She had earned her GED, then a bachelor's degree in social work through correspondence courses. She had transformed her life, preparing for the day she could be reunited with her daughter. "Your Honor," Maria said, her voice steady now, "I need to thank you, not just for following the law that day, but for giving my daughter something I never could: stability, education, and unconditional love. You gave her a chance at a future I was too broken to provide." Sophia stood up, walking to the space between the judge's bench and where her mother stood. For the first time in 12 years, mother and daughter embraced. Judge Harrison watched through tears he no longer bothered to hide. As the courtroom emptied that day, 3 lives have been forever changed by a secret that proved sometimes the greatest act of justice happens not in following the letter of the law, but in following the deeper law of human compassion. Judge Harrison had spent 15 years carrying the weight of decision that had torn apart a family. But in doing so, he had also rebuilt it in ways none of them could have imagined. The story serves as a reminder that behind every case, every sentence, and every legal decision are real people with real lives that hang in the balance. Sometimes the most profound justice is found not in punishment, but in the courage to take responsibility for the consequences of that punishment. And sometimes the most unexpected families are formed in the aftermath of life's most difficult moments. If you like that story, please subscribe for more. Thank you, and until next time.